This short video is about powering on the Juno. Now there's a green button at the top. I'm going to hold that down for a second and it should power up the Juno. And we see the tremble little series note here that comes up on your screen. And then in a little bit you'll notice the the windows starting to fire up. And it takes a minute or two to set up. Now it says Windows enabled handheld. That's starting up the Windows. And after the Windows is set, we're going to get to the home screen. And we're just waiting for that to start up. Okay. Now that starts up, and what you've got here is you've got the date. You want to make sure that's the right date. And you've got some information here that shows you about your storage and whether your Bluetooth is on or off. You want the Wi-Fi off, and for this you want the Bluetooth off. All right, and what we're going to do is go down here to the bottom, to the Windows little icon here. So we're going to touch the Windows icon, and the Windows icon brings up a bunch of our programs, and we're going to touch the TerraSync for the program we use for GPS. All right, and this is from Tremble. It's called Tremble TerraSync, and we're going to always select the Professional Edition. Now the Professional Edition starts up, showing the version. Now it often starts up with the last screen that you used, and there's a little menu up here that you can use to drop down to show you the different screens that you could bring up. The map screen, the data screen, the navigation status. Now normally we start with the setup. All right, so we're going to start with the setup, and this is where we do the settings. Now if your system was already set up, these settings might be set, but if they're not set, we can go through them. So we're going to want to touch here. This sets the GNS settings. This says where the GPS receiver is. Now for this exercise we want to use the internal, but if we were using some other one, we could do the little drop down and select the various Bluetooth ones that we might be using for those other exercises. But we'll want to leave this as and I rolled down here a little further. Let's roll back up. Okay, you can see this will say GPS 4, and the rest of the ones you can just take as default. All right, in that window. So okay, so when we've got that set, then we say done down at the bottom, done. And now this is the turn on screen button for the GPS on this unit. So we would touch that GNS button, and that turns on, GNSS button, and that turns on the GPS. And you can see the little hand shaking. It's trying to connect to the internal COM 4 GPS, and it sometimes takes a little while. So, so you might have to be patient. Now, it's connected, and it's got 0 satellites, and if it doesn't have the almanac, it'll download the almanac right here. And if this doesn't have a fresh almanac, it could take quite a while. But this should come in pretty soon, giving us the satellites very soon, because I believe it's got a fresh almanac. But now what I'm going to do is do the finish the setup, and I'm going to go to the status, right? And the status shows us the status of the satellites that are overhead while it's connected with them. And we can do the sky plot, or we could do the satellite information, or we could do the receiver to see which receiver it is. We can see that this is the Juno receiver, the internal one. So there's a lot of things you can see from but normally you stay on the sky plot, and we just have to wait until it obtains the information that it needs. It could need a fresh almanac, but sometimes it takes a little bit for it to listen and connect to the satellites. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video and we'll start it when we get connection. Okay, now we're getting GPS satellite information. You can see that we've got 4 satellites visible, and so it's giving us a position, and this is the position in the geographic coordinate system. And you see the PDOP, and you could see the PDOP filter here, that you could talk about the PDOP, the various different PDOP settings, and this is a little slider that is used for the PDOP, and we can change the PDOP in the settings. But for our particular lab and the first few labs, we're just going to focus on whatever the default PDOP is, and in this case it happens to be 5.5, which isn't too bad, but it could be a little better. So what we're going to do now for this lab is we're going to collect data in two different ways. We're going to collect data, and how we collect data is with the data tab, here, and we're going to select new. All right, so that should be data new. All right, hope you can see that. And we want to make sure we're always collecting on the storage card. If you touch this, you can see that it goes to the default. That's the inside card. That's the inside memory of this unit. We always want the storage card. Then you could give it a name. Now, generally, I try and give it names that make sense. So I'm gonna hold the shift down, and I'm gonna say, hold the caps down, shift caps, and I'm gonna do no, and I'm gonna say no was for this one, for our first one. You know, and WAS is another name for SBA, satellite-based augmentation system. And so you could say WAS, or so I'm just going to say that's the name of this rover file. All right, and this is the rover file. Now, this rover file has a height, antenna height. Now, in this case, we're real close to the ground, so I'm going to put that and change that. I'm going to backspace here. Let's leading everything here. Okay. Okay, so I got it 1M. All right, and I'm going to say OK, and it recognizes 1M as a meter. I could go back and check that, but it's 1M for meter, for 1 meter. And now I'm going to select the options. There's the points, lines, or polygons. All right, now you can have a choice here in the options. You could log now or log later. And you've got to select these options before you get into a point line or a polygon. I always like to do log later, and I'll show you that. But log now, it just jumps right to doing it. But log later is what I prefer. All right, so I'm going to touch the point now. Now you'll notice that it's ready to record, but it's paused. All right, so I could, at this point, I could then touch the little menu down at the bottom for the keyboard and type something in here, whatever I wanted. And now I'm all set, and then I could hit the log button down at the bottom, says the log, and now it starts logging up here, starts moving right along. And you can see you could control when you want the logging. And now you generally wait till about 60, so you could get at least 60 positions for a point. When you're standing still holding it, wait for this to count to about 60. Now, while that's counting, we'll talk a little bit about batteries here. The green on the left is the receiver battery, and the green on the right is the strength of the battery of the Juno. All right. So whatever receiver you're using is on the left, and the Juno is on the right. Now, in this case, they're both the same because it's the Juno internal receiver. Okay. So now I've got 43 points. I'm waiting for a few more here. When it gets to 60, you can see that it's 9.8 meter estimated error. You can see you're using 5 satellites while I'm collecting, and I'm standing still here. So I'm collecting at the same spot. Then when I'm done, I would move to the done. I'd select the done down at the bottom. Now that point is selected. Now, if you don't like that logging, that pause logging, you could go to the log now, and I'm going to do that for the log to show you the line generic. Okay, so let's just say you're going to do a sidewalk now. So you're going to do a sidewalk. I do line generic, and now it's recording right now while you're standing still there at the beginning of the sidewalk. So you better start walking, and then you would type in whatever you want while you're walking. Now, and then after you finish the sidewalk, then you hit the done. And so I'm going to hit the done down here at the bottom. Now you can see how that logging later is a little more logical, because I'll log later now. Okay, so I'm set at log later, so I'm going to touch the sidewalk. Now it's not logging, so I could, before I start walking, I could type in what. So now what we're doing here is, you can see I started a line, okay, option, and it hasn't started recording because it's got the pause. So it allows me to type things in, and then once I type things in, I have my name, my description right, then I could type the log, touch the log button, and now it's starting to log, and I walk rather quickly down the center of the sidewalk or the edge of the parking lot or whatever I'm working on. And then when I'm finished with that, I do the done. All right, so I do the done, and then it actually saves that point. Okay, now there's a couple other options that we want to talk about. We want to log now, log later, that's fine, and the logging interval, and we'll just want to leave the logging interval, but that's where you could change it. Now, another thing about logging an area or logging a line would be this idea of an offset. So let's say I'm going to log an area, and I'm in pause, okay, and say I'm going to do a parking lot, and I want that parking lot, I'm going to walk behind the cars. So I'm going to have I want the point to be thrown off to my right, moved off from my right, off by a certain number of meters. I could go to the options, and I could go to this idea of offset, and I'd touch the offset, and I would say which direction do I want to offset it, and I would offset that to be the right, and I would say how many meters, and I would say how long's a car. Maybe a car is 9, maybe a car is 3 meters, that would be 15, that would be 3 times, that'd be, so we're talking about maybe 3 meters or so for a car. Let's say a car is 3 meters. And then I would, so then I'd say done, okay? And so I've now got it set at a 3 meter offset to the right. So it's moving my point 3 meters. So I got to make sure that I'm staying 3 meters, or about 9 feet, from where I want the line recorded. So now if I think, well, a car isn't really 9 feet, so I could go back, instead of 3 meters, I could go back and do 4 meters. So that'd be 12 feet, or maybe a car is 5 meters or something of that sort. Maybe that's a better option, is a 5 meter. I don't know how long a car is if you're walking behind the cars instead of in the front of the cars to do the edge of the parking lot. So then you can also do whatever comment you want about that parking lot, and then obviously you do your log down at the bottom to begin your logging. And you see the little pencil writing here showing you the log. And you'll want to walk quickly. You could hold the device above your head so your body isn't blocking. And then when you get back, you want to remember it's always offsetting, in this case to the right, at 5 meters. So you want to make sure you stay 5 meters approximately from the position you want recorded. Then when you're finished with the area, come back to your beginning point, and you would touch the done. Okay, so now we've finished our collection point for the non-WAS or non-collection. So I'll close the rover, or the sort of the folder that I have my data in, and I'm going to say OK. Now I'm ready to start a new folder. Now with the new folder, I want to collect it with WAS, so I've got to go to the setup, and I'm going to go over to the real-time settings. Okay, and then I'm going to change this to WAS. The other name for WAS is Satellite-Based Augmentation System. WAS, that's sort of a generic name for WAS. So I'm going to select that, and I say done. And now you'll notice the little WAS thing comes on up here, the little signal. Now, when it's blinking, that means it doesn't have the WAS acquired. When it's solid, that means it's got WAS lock. All right, so you're going to want to wait till you have WAS lock. So I'm going to go to data, okay, and now I'm going to make sure it's storage name, and here I might give it a name. Say the name I might give it would be, something here that would be, oops, I got the name right. I would say, give it a name that I could read, and my typing is poor here while I'm holding the camera, SBAS or something. So I know it's got the WAS in this particular rover file. I'm going to create it, and now I've got the 1 meter because it's close to the ground again, and that's fine. So I'm ready to go. So I create by saying OK. Okay, so now I'm ready to do point line value. Now, if I record right now with the blinky blink WAS, it doesn't have WAS lock. So I have to leave it set until that WAS gets locked. All right, and that WAS lock should be fairly soon. It takes a few minutes, but it's got to have a pretty clear view of the horizon to have the WAS lock. And I can't, let's see, my body's blocking it here maybe or something. I'm trying to keep it in the sun, but you can get the idea seeing it, that you want that WAS to be solid, not blinking. And then you go through the same process, collect the point, line, and area. Now you want to do the same point, line, and area that you did with the non-WAS, so you can compare them and transfer it to the computer. Now, before you, when you finish your data collection, you'll have to do close, all right, and make sure the rover is closed. If you try and transfer the data from the chip with the rover not closed, you're not going to find it or see it. The rover actually has to be closed. You want to remember, a rover has points, lines, and polygons within it. A rover is sort of a family. Now, you can't mix WAS within a rover. If you want to collect WAS, you would have to have a rover that's set for WAS. And you can't have a rover that you have some WAS points and some non-WAS points. It would be best if it was all one rover to keep things simple for you and not try and pull them apart afterwards. So now to finish this, I'm going to do the data down, and I'm going to go to exit. And I exit, I'm fine. Now I turn it off, and when I turn it off, it's important you turn it off when you pull the chip. I'm going to push the little green button, and you can see on the green button, if I push the green button correctly here, you can, I'm not pushing it hard, got to hold it, push it, and hold. Okay, it comes up with the shutdown, and that's what you want. You want to select shutdown, and now the device is shut down. So you want to pay attention. You're probably best if you keep it shut down all the time so you don't run the battery down. Okay, thank you very much.